B. Professor Hwang Sun-il. He is at Dongguk University, and he has studied at Lancaster University in the United Kingdom. I'm at Dongguk University. I specialize in Pali language, but and I am very honored to be here for this conference. Now, the first presenter is Professor Hiroko Kawanami. She is at Lancaster University in United Kingdom. She has majored about society and Buddhism, and today's title will be Continuing the Legacy and Future Prospects for Buddhist Nuns in Myanmar.
Good afternoon. I'm very happy to be here today, and I'm honored to be with you at this meritorious event to commemorate the 10th anniversary of Venerable Dehe's passing. I also want to thank you from my heart for your hospitality and kindness throughout this conference. Now, today, I would talk on behalf of Myanmar Buddhist Nuns, and as you can see here, they have sent you their loving kindness and good wishes for the success of the conference from Myanmar. So it is just a photograph, but they have sent this for you. Obviously, as you can tell from my name, I am not from Myanmar, and I am Japanese, currently living and working in the UK. But I have been working with these Myanmar nuns for the last almost 35 years, and have seen them struggle and overcome many obstacles in order to advance their monastic education. So firstly, I will give you a brief introduction, a very brief one, of Myanmar. As you can see, I'm sure you know where Myanmar is, but it is sandwiched between the Indian and the Chinese civilizations to the west. They have Bangladesh, to the east they have Thailand. Now, the religious landscape in Myanmar and Southeast Asia is very different from East Asia, which we have been talking about in Japan or in Korea. The majority population are Buddhist in Myanmar, so maybe almost 90% are Buddhist in the Theravada tradition, which is a very conservative tradition that upholds monasticism as the center of their religious worship. So monasticism, the monastic community, the Sangha, is very important. Another thing which is different from East Asia, in Southeast Asia like Myanmar, is the relationship between the state and the Sangha. That is, the political power and the religious authority are closely intertwined. That is something that you might not, maybe you might appreciate that you are away from the government or there is a separation. But in Myanmar, historically, the relationship has been almost symbiotic, intertwined. And currently, there are about 250,000 vocational Buddhist monks, which is the same number as the soldiers in the Myanmar army. So you can imagine that they are a very dominant force in society. Majority of the monks and nuns are from the rural communities both in Upper Myanmar and in the lower Delta region. And the rural agricultural communities are very religious, and they are ardent supporters of the monastic community, as well as this is the recruiting ground for the Sangha. So you can see, in a way, ironically, the monks and the soldiers in Myanmar come from the same background. That means they share the same religious and conservative values in a way. We normally say they send the brightest boy, the son, to the monastery to become educated, and if the son doesn't do too well at school, maybe they join the army. So maybe there is something that I can imagine which happened in Europe or in Japan in the past as well, sending sons to these different trajectories in life. Now, the Buddhist nuns, the majority of them are also from these agricultural communities. Very few come from the cities. And they return there during the harvest time to collect rice, oil, garlic, onions, flour to last for many months. And villagers also visit nunneries with their harvest. So traditionally, they did not donate in cash, they donated in kind. Usually these foodstuff, staple food, and so on. Now, Myanmar currently has one of the largest concentrations of Buddhist nuns in a single country. And their number has seen a steady increase in the last century. So in contrast to some countries where you have seen a decrease, the number in Myanmar is on the increase. As of 2020, the latest statistics, there were almost 70,000 Buddhist nuns registered with the Department of Religious Affairs of the ministry, and more than 4,000 independent Buddhist nuns run by the nuns themselves operated nationwide. Buddhist nuns in Myanmar are commonly referred to as tilashin, tila for sila, precept keepers, and the majority of them observe 8 precepts, which means they are celibate, take no food in the afternoon, abstain from singing or dancing, do not adorn themselves with cosmetics or flowers, they don't even use fragrant soap. These observances are fundamental to their monastic life, and moral restraint and commitment implied in these precepts form the core of their religious identity. And as you know, observing 8 precepts, please don't undermine them as precept nuns, because to observe them fully and to be totally committed to these 8 precepts are very difficult. Now, in the government documents, these nuns are classified as Sthasana Wundan, Wundamya, actually in Myanmar language, which means those who serve the sasana. So this is the category given in the official documents. And nuns, along with monks and clerics of other religions, like Christianity or Islam, they are defined as vocational members of a religious community of their affiliation. And it is noteworthy that the country, Myanmar's founding constitution in 1947, limited the civil rights for all religious persons in this vocational category, and this remains unchanged under the current Myanmar Constitution of 2008. And this means monks and nuns in Myanmar, alongside other clerics and priests, cannot vote or participate in political activities. And thus, they are legally prohibited from voicing their political opinions. Now, the legal provisions for Buddhist nuns manifest some degree of ambiguity because they're not fully ordained. So they're not, bhikkhunis, and they're not fully ordained, but they are officially registered with the Department of Religious Affairs. And monastic members over the age of 18 are issued a monastic identity card. And this grants them special privileges to move around the country and travel without any restrictions that apply to non-monastic citizens, and also allow these monastic members to transport donated food items to their registered monastic residence. In addition, passport and other official documents of Myanmar nuns display their Buddhist titles rather than their previous lay names, indicating a higher degree of integration into the monastic organization compared to nuns in some other countries. Now, Buddhist nuns in Myanmar, alongside monks and male novices, are also represented at regional administrative tiers of the National Monastic Organization. And that is Tilashin, the Nuns Council, operate at the divisional tier in Yangon, Mandalay, Sagaing, in all these big divisions. And also in the self-administered ethnic states, minority states. And these Tilashin councils are also active in many hundreds of townships across the country in administering their own monastic affairs. The township nun representatives are mostly influential Dhamma teachers or abbesses who represent large nunnery schools, and they exercise considerable authority by granting permission to new monastic members. They oversee local nunnery affairs and take overall responsibility for the welfare of resident nuns. Now, Myanmar nuns can be classified according to the type of religious work they are engaged in. So, although they are encouraged to pursue both theory and practice, well, you can roughly put them into three groups. These are pariyatti, which is nuns who devote themselves to scriptural learning and teaching. The second is patipati, nuns who practice and spend most of their time in meditation centers. And the third one is parahita, which means social work. So three types. Each nun and nunnery may have a different vocational profile in terms of the type of work they undertake and the different emphasis they place on their religious work. For example, a nunnery in the first category, pariyatti, this group functions primarily as a Buddhist seminary called Satendai, where Buddhist scriptures like Abhidhamma, Vinaya, and Pali language are taught. And reputable Satendai can attract much attention and receive continuous material support from the lay supporters. This type of nunnery normally has a large concentration of full-time student residents, and thus communal rules, which is in addition to 8 precepts, thus communal rules tend to be observed much more rigidly compared to small nunneries in which few nuns inhabit, maybe old and retired nuns inhabit. And in this paper, I will focus primarily on these Buddhist seminaries called Satendai, and look at the scholastic learning of nuns rather than on meditation centers or nunneries that conduct mainly social welfare work. Now, the monastic education of nuns today, once entering a nunnery, education for nuns starts at around the age of 13 or 14. And this is after they have completed the compulsory state education required by the government. Buddhist canonical subjects and Pali language are taught, as well as moral values and general Buddhist protocol, such as all the honorific special terms you use to address a senior member or a monk, or all the kind of daily behavior in relation to those who are senior to you, or how you care for those who are junior. All these things are taught in the early part of their monastic training. Secular subjects in Myanmar, like English or geography and so on, are not normally taught in monasteries. And it is noteworthy that monasteries in Myanmar are fundamentally private institutions. So the government, although they try, but they do not interfere with the details of teachings of the Buddhist curriculum. So this means teaching methods and approaches differ according to the respective Dhamma teachers. And it also differs according to the scholastic lineage they are affiliated with. Now, the first Buddhist nun passed the government scriptural exam in 1943 with flying colors. And she was the first one who received the government Dhammacharya degree. This is the certificate to teach the Dhamma. And it is, in Myanmar, this is a very prestigious title, because once you pass the Dhammacharya exam, which is obviously very difficult, you are given a special seal that gives you a sign of your authority. So a nun who has a Dhammacharya degree would have a special seal that you can stamp a letter with authority. It has your name on, your Buddhist title, and your degree, all inscribed in this seal, and that is provided to these scholastic nuns. So they can show their authority whenever they write a reference letter and so on. Currently, there are about 700 nun scholars who hold a state certified Dhammacharya degree. However, the top Buddhist monks who are more, you can say, well-versed in the advanced scriptures, the advanced Nikayas, the top Buddhist scholars are still monks. And as non-students advance in their study, they have to seek out monks, the teachers who are sympathetic and willing to give them lessons in conditions that do not violate the Vinaya. Now, the national curriculum for Buddhist studies is drawn up by the government, by the Department of Religious Affairs, which allows the nuns to study the scriptures in both Myanmar and Pali languages, including the Vinaya and Abhidhamma. Their scriptural learning is usually conducted at 5 levels. I think 50 or 60 years, they could only enter the exams up to the 3rd level. Now, gradually, the doors are opening so that they can also sit in advanced scriptural exams, which are at the higher levels. And I think the nuns, the majority, will try to get to the 5th level, which is the Dhammacharya qualification exams. And I think by then it might have taken them 20 years. And there are further exams they can take, but probably they're too exhausted by then. So they tend to be satisfied with this Dhammacharya degree. Now, the high standards of nuns' education evidenced in their success in scriptural exams in the last century have contributed to the positive changes in public perception towards the Buddhist nuns. And this can also be discerned in the popularity of temporary initiation for young girls from middle-class families in Yangon and Mandalay. These are the 2 big cities in Myanmar. And stories of prominent nun scholars are also circulated in Buddhist magazines, in the social media, and sometimes popular nunnery schools are introduced in local TV programs. In this way, the official scriptural qualifications have given them a most tangible determinant in uplifting their social religious position and attracting the respect, as well as donations, donation income from the Buddhist public. Now, Myanmar nuns comply with, although there are 8 precept observers, they comply with a national nuns code of practice called Tilashin Chinwut. And these rules, which are monastic rules, were originally compiled by a nun scholar and then endorsed by the Sangha Executive Committee in 1994 and distributed by the Department for Promotion and Propagation of the Sasana in the same year. Now, the Tilashin Chinwut, this code of practice, well, you can call it a code book, provides a monastic guideline containing 84 instructions, which prescribes detailed duties and obligations covering theft, sexual misconduct, social and economic transactions, as well as matters of personal decorum. It also describes the procedure for becoming initiated. I wouldn't use the word ordained because they're not bhikkhunis, but they still have the detailed procedure for becoming initiated as a monastic. Other normative rules that nuns adhere to have been passed down for generations in their community, regulating every detail of their everyday lives, including study and practice, alms collecting, participation in religious functions, clothing, deportment, bathing, manners of food intake, as well as acceptable mode of behavior and correct terms of address towards monks and senior members. Now, this reveals how nuns are expected to eat little, sleep little, talk little, possess few items, be obedient and diligent, and work towards the common goal of the Buddhist community. Many of these rules seem to follow the framework of the Vinaya in their collective aim to uphold monastic discipline and communal cohesion, despite the fact that there is no Vinaya for precept nuns. So they do follow many, many rules. So don't just undermine them as precept nuns. Now, so I think in the conference proceedings, the second part, which is the future prospect for Buddhist nuns, are there, because I think the first part was not exactly in the proceedings. But I have listed 4 future prospects for Buddhist nuns in Myanmar. And these prospects reflect 2 directions. One direction is to focus on their otherworldly religious position and concentrate on scriptural learning and dissemination of the Dhamma. The other direction is to become more involved with this worldly, this secular world, and engage with various welfare projects. So the former, the otherworldly direction, will lead them to put more efforts to study the scriptures in Pali and produce more Dhamma teachers and enhance their scholastic reputation in the monastic community even further. A nun could also opt to become fully ordained as bhikkhuni and try to close the gender disparity in the Myanmar Sangha. Otherwise, she could opt to become a 10-precept observer and focus on her introspective practice and spend her time in meditation. On the other, a nun could forge a close working relationship with her lay congregation and engage in non-governmental activities or in promoting humanitarian causes. However, the nuns themselves seem to think that too much involvement with secular work or getting too close to the secular world would subsequently undermine their spiritual worth and their neutrality. And if the nuns become too closely associated with mundane efforts or mundane affairs, they could also become co-opted into projects of the government or of other secular agencies. And this is something I think you might find rather strange because, as I said in the beginning, in East Asia, you don't have that close relationship with the government. But here, I would just skip the two prospects, like becoming a bhikkhuni or becoming a 10-precept observing nun, and jump to, I think, the third one, which is about the prospect of becoming more socially engaged for Myanmar Buddhist nuns. Now, Buddhist nuns in Myanmar have been active in social welfare type of work, which I refer to as parahita, opening old people's homes for infirm folks and run schools for poor and disadvantaged children. Many have been engaged in various activities as such to fill in the vacuum not catered for by the state welfare sector or local authorities. However, it has to be mentioned that prior to 1989, the Myanmar government, under its socialist policies, did not allow any activities in the civil society, and even tried to prevent people from working in the private sector. Moreover, social projects run by nuns are difficult to obtain material support from the Myanmar public due to the prevailing perceptions that view parahita as a poor diversion from their main religious work. And children from poor families or those without parents are usually looked after in their extended families, and people hold the view that monastic members should not involve themselves in what is considered to be the responsibility of secular authorities. However, there has been a noticeable shift since the cyclone Nargis that hit the country in 2008. Since then, natural disaster has been a catalyst in shifting people's perception towards charity. And I think Myanmar people give more to social donations from the cyclone Nargis aftermath. And as humanitarian aid poured into the country then from the international community, Myanmar people started to view such occasions as also meritorious opportunities meritorious in a sense to help those who are suffering as much as the traditional offerings to the monastic community. In this, monastic members have become an essential medium to channel lay people's goodwill and generosity. That is, people donate to the monastic community so that the money goes to the victims of these natural disasters. So monks and nuns would be taking the general goodwill of the people, what they have donated, not to accept the goods, but to transfer them through their internal network to the villages and transport the donations to these rural villages. So they have become like a medium to transmit people's goodwill. Now, the fourth option may be a little bit sort of a kind of a strange for many of you, but Buddhist nuns since the 1990s have been co-opted by the Myanmar government, to take on active roles to support the state initiative to promote the government policy of Myanmarization. Now, nuns have been sent to ethnic border regions to disseminate the sasana and recruit young children and girls from ethnic minority backgrounds. So a large number of independent nunneries were also started in ethnic self-administered zones in the last 30 years, and they have been given special subsidies and financial support by the local authorities to start these nunneries. And currently, there are more than 500 Buddhist nunneries operating in Kayin and Kaya state in the east, Mon state in the southeast, Chin state in the west, Kachin and Shan states bordering China to the north, and in the Rakhine state in the south. So these Buddhist nunneries are springing up as part of the government policy to assimilate the ethnic minority children into the Burmese language and into the Buddhist culture. Because many of these ethnic minority regions, the population are not necessarily Buddhist. Many are Christians, some are animist, others are a mixture of spirit worship and so on. But a large number of independent nunneries were also started in ethnic self-administered zones in the last 30 years. I've said that already, sorry. And these figures, 500 nunneries in these areas, these figures may give some indication as to the contribution made by Buddhist nuns in the government's acculturation policy, although unwittingly on their part, or the nuns may not even be aware that they have become a tool of this acculturation policy simply because they are seen to be apolitical and they will not question, if they are told to build a nunnery, they would do that. Now, meanwhile, the aspiration to propagate the sasana seems to have closed some areas of gender disparity. Previously, nuns were barred from entering state Sangha universities. But nowadays, especially since the state Theravada Buddhist Missionary University was established in 1998, scholarly inclined nuns are encouraged to enter the university to become trained as state missionaries to propagate Buddhism in the international community. And as I said, compared to monks who have been publicly vocal and even militant at times in providing a nationalist argument, the nuns have been largely silent in the political arena. Thank you. And as their social stature rises in the public perception, with more scholarly nuns exerting leadership in their local communities, Buddhist nuns have become increasingly co-opted in performing ceremonial roles for the state and promoting the campaign to convert the ethnic population to Buddhism. So I think I have little time left, but would like to just conclude and show you about a dozen slides of Myanmar nuns. So to conclude, you can say that the secular objectives and progressive ideals we take for granted may not always comply with the communal values and spiritual aspirations of Buddhist nuns in Myanmar. And the revival of Bhikkhuni lineage in the Theravada tradition and ordaining precept nuns may empower some members, but some nuns are concerned that it could lead to divisions in their tightly knit community, which has traditionally valued interdependence over independence. And as you know, currently Myanmar is undergoing a very unstable, politically unstable period after the military takeover, as well as economic uncertainty. Monastic members will have to adapt their social-religious positions and future aspirations in response to new demands placed on them by the state and society. And therefore, their future direction, whether it will be this worldly or the other worldly, have to be explored in the context of internal dynamics, networks, and relationships in which they operate, and also in acknowledgement of their aspirations to become worthy monastic members who can make positive contribution to the future of their country. So I think I will show you just a few photographs. Okay. So this is an area called Sagain, which is a very important center for their monastic education, just by the Irrawaddy River, and across the river is the second city called Mandalay. These buildings are all nunnery buildings. So this is how it used to be. The nuns will go to villages during the harvest time, and they would chant, recite outside, and villagers will bring them all kinds of staple food, harvest after the harvest period. So groundnuts and oil, onions, and once their bag on the head becomes full, they move on to the next house. And actually for like 2 or 3 months, it's a very hard chore, but they have to walk from village to village. Sometimes they are transported by bullock carts. And again, this is how it used to be. You see that the nuns, this is about 35 years ago when I started my research, they don't even have tables to write on. They have come to a monastery because they didn't have these highly trained nun teachers then, and they had to sit on this side of the curtain. The monk teacher is on the other side of the curtain, as well as the monk students, so that they don't meet the eyes of the male monastics, but at least they can hear the voice of the lecturer. I think now they have microphones and the technology has helped. So, but still, the aspiration, they are very aspirational. The motivation to study has really carried them through to really, open many doors and enhance their religious as well as social status in the last 50 years. So that is myself. I was also a nun there during my field work for 2 years. So I have really endured bed bugs and all this kind of traveling on bullock carts and living without running water and so on. So it is a very difficult life. But as you know, despite all the obstacles, they want to learn. They want to study the scriptures. They want to learn Pali, and you have to admire their kind of a motivation as well as that kind of a continuous, so they just don't give up whatever hardship they come across. And this is the site of the nunnery school. I started with 3 nun teachers in 1998 because I had to think, after doing my fieldwork, how can I help, as we all try to help, and how can I help in order to enhance their religious status. Venerable Lecture Tsomo has been there, but initially there was nothing there except for the bamboo hut. And the tree at you see over there is what I thought was wonderful, and somehow it attracted me. And this is how it has become in 25 years. The tree is still there, but now this is the entrance of one of the most successful Buddhist nunnery schools, a Buddhist seminary that has been operating for the last 20 years. And rather than these sort of lonely, solitary figures going from village to village collecting alms, now they go in such a disciplined manner in a long queue. Sometimes they have to take their bus. They now have their own, sort of minibus. Sometimes they walk, but they go out for alms 8 times a month. So this is before lunch. They are all queuing up. And the kind of a level of discipline is really remarkable. And this you will see in the way they put their sandals every day before lunch. I don't know how they identify their own sandals, but everything they pay attention to. And this kind of a focus on you can say mindfulness, is part of their daily training. And we started to attract foreign tourists. Before the COVID, they used to come every day in a busload to see their discipline. So I think this is something very, very basic, it seems, but it is not easy when you have like 300 young girls trying to make sure that they always leave their sandals. Everything is paid, the details are paid attention to. So that's myself and my husband trying to offer them rice. This is lunch. Again, the abbess is there sitting in front of all the disciple students. And from this nunnery school, started in 1998, we have 5 branches, which were started by the graduates who passed the Dhammacharya exams, and now they are certified state scholars. And this is a mock exam. Before the government exam, they have mock exams at the nunnery. And they are all praying that people will not get COVID and recover from the illness. So this is goodbye from the nuns. So thank you for your listening to my talk.
출가자들입니다. 여기까지 하도록 하겠습니다. We have heard about the proper monastic education. The Sangha doesn't accept them as part of their Sangha, but the state include them as part of religious community. So give a big round of applause